Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Harmon Speaks. I have a treat for you tonight. We have Lauren here visiting us. Lauren is actually a former student of mine from way, I don't want to give her age.
Well, don't do that to her.
It was
That long ago.
10 years ago, let's
The
say.
school was held in a cave back in those days. And our chalk we actually got off this railway. You don't want to know this. But anyway, Lauren is now working with an organization that I'm going to ask us to learn about tonight. So welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. And you were in my French class, too.
I was, yes.
That's right. She survived my French class.
I survived and went on to take the next level of French even.
I'm glad to have you here tonight. And I know you are a member of the staff of Joni and Friends.
Joni and Friends.
Joni and Friends! I practiced that all day and I got it wrong.
Well,
Joni and Friends!
It was a common mistake. So
Joni loves Chachi. That's what she has.
Look, ma'am, I know I don't know you, but you need to learn to pronounce your name correctly. I can't deal with this. I'm sorry. All right, well, I'm very sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Will you tell us a little bit about who Joni is and why does she have so darn many friends?
I will.
Okay,
Absolutely. So Joni Eareckson Tada, some of you have probably heard of Joni.
Okay.
So when she was 17 years old, this was back a few years ago in 1967, and she dove into the Chesapeake Bay and had a diving accident.
Okay.
And had a spinal cord injury and ended up being a quadriplegic.
Okay.
And so when Joni went to the hospital, she, of course, imagine being 17, you have your whole life ahead of you, and all of a sudden, everything stops in her mind. You know, she had been very active, very athletic, and all of a sudden, life was just completely changed for her.
Okay.
And so in the hospital, she just became really depressed, as you would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Really began to question why this happened to me, and eventually just really cried out to God and said, God, I don't want to live. But obviously, she couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
So she cried out to God and said, God, if I can't die, then show me how to live. And so that was kind of a turning point for her where she began to just question, okay, what's my life about now? How do I transition from this active young adult who had my whole life ahead of me to now I'm in a wheelchair, probably for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And she had friends who came around her who shared the hope of the gospel, who shared the Bible with her, who began to pray with her, loved her really well.
Mm-hmm.
And she began to kind of come out of this depression and share her story. She started living again. She started painting. Some of you have probably seen her paintings where she paints with her mouth. It's an amazing artist.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, she just began to share her story. She shared it on the Today Show in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And God just used that to begin to minister to people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that was born Joni and Friends Company. So.
Okay. And what does the organization do?
So we do a lot of things. When Joni and Friends initially began, it was a lot of just reaching out to people with disabilities, giving them hope.
Uh-huh.
Again, when Joni spoke, there's a book about her that she wrote years ago. There's a movie out.
Do you remember what that's called?
It's called Joni. J-O-N, Joni.
If I read it, I'd know how to pronounce it.
That's right. And I'll bring you one. I meant to bring you one tonight, but I'll bring you her story because it's a great story.
Well, I'd like to
And then it began, I think in around the 90s, she began to do family retreats. She realized that a lot of families who are affected by disability just needed a place to go and be celebrated and be able to do things that other families could do. They needed a place where they could have respite.
Right.
So we've done a family retreat in Knoxville for several years.
Okay.
Laura Payne was our first area director. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, I did not.
Yes. And so at our family retreat, we welcome the entire family comes, and we have programs for everybody. So the person who has a disability is given a volunteer or a buddy who's with them, helping them do all the things throughout the week. We have a program for the moms. We have a program for the dads. We have a program for siblings. We have a program for kids and adults. And we do all kinds of fun activities. It's a lot of time for parents to just share what's going on in their lives and meet people who are struggling with the same issues they're struggling with.
Right.
So it's a real time of respite for them. And it's just a place where they're celebrated, a place where they can do all the things that maybe they can't do in a regular setting. So they get to participate in the Family Olympics. They we have a dance every year. We have a talent show. They can go down the water slide. They can do all the things at camp. And it's just a week where they feel normal. They feel like everybody here gets me. I don't have to explain things. I don't get funny looks. And so it's just a beautiful time. We have times of worship. We have times of teaching. And it's just a great week to celebrate them. Then we also have a marriage getaway, which is just for parents who have a child with a disability. And they are able to get away for the weekend. It's just it's a shorter time, just a weekend that they go to. We go to Whitestone Inn. And it's just another great weekend where they can have respite. They get teaching and worship, and they have time to meet with other couples who are in the same boat they're in. They have time to just rest, time to connect as a couple, which they don't often get because they have so many responsibilities. And then we also do a warrior getaway, which actually we're leading this week. We do warrior getaways now for veterans and their whole families.
Oh, okay.
So same kind of things. And these are all held at camps and areas where there's all kinds of activities. There's canoeing and ropes courses and all those kinds of things. So it's just a great time to allow these families to get away, have respite, have care. And then from that, we get to know these families, and we have events throughout the year just to give them times to get together and be together. The other program, one of our other big programs that a lot of people have heard about, is our Wheels for the World program. And that's a program where we collect wheelchairs. So we have a warehouse in downtown Knoxville, and we collect wheelchairs from all over Knoxville. And we store them there, and then our logistics team sends a truck, and they take the trucks to prisons all over the country. And so I got to go back in May to a prison in Clifton, and they have a program where they refurbish the wheelchairs. So the chaplain of the prison invites these inmates to come in. They're taught how to clean them up, how to fix broken parts, how to get them all ready and in working order. And once they're refurbished, then they're sent all over the world. And in Knoxville, we send ours to Guatemala. We send hundreds of wheelchairs to Guatemala, and we go twice a year. We send a team down to go. We have engineers and physical therapists and our team, and they fix up these wheelchairs custom fit to these people.
That's great.
And some of these people have been crawling around in the dirt their whole life. Some of these people are adults that really have no mobility because somebody can't carry them around, or they're being dragged around in wheelchairs. So, but we don't just give them the wheelchair. We give them a Bible in their language. We spend time getting to know them, ministering to them. And then in many of these countries, Joni now has a program called Joni's House, where sometimes we'll partner with an organization that's already there. So that when our team leaves, there's still a team there that is ministering to all of their needs, physical, emotional. They need counseling. If they need, in fact, we just, a couple weeks ago, the little boy, his name is Levy, he got our 200,000th wheelchair in El Salvador. And he is very, very sick, has multiple disabilities. He has cerebral palsy, nonverbal, really hard family situation. His mom has breast cancer. But we were able to just tell him he has 5% kidney function right now. And the family said, we can't afford his medication, we can't afford dialysis. And so a team was there, I think it was last week actually, and said, we're going to take care of it.
That's fantastic.
So it's just this beautiful picture of, people who are getting rid of their wheelchairs, going to these prisons, bringing dignity to these inmates who it gives them purpose, it gives them meaning. And then to take it to these countries where, here in America, it's a lot easier to do a wheelchair. And in a lot of these areas, it's just not. So giving mobility to these people. So, and then my job, what we do locally, so we do have a local Knoxville office. We have, our headquarters is in Agoura Hills, California, but we have offices all over the country. And so our Knoxville office, my job, I'm the ministry relations manager, and so my job is to work with local churches. And what we've realized is a lot of churches care about people with disability. They care, they want to welcome them, but they don't really know what to do. They don't have that training. The pastor's not been trained in how do you make your church accessible? How do you do these things? So we go into churches and we really try to talk about how people with disability are just people. We have more alike than we have different, right? And so we really try to change kind of the culture of the church because sometimes barriers are not just physical. I mean, obviously, sometimes it's hard to physically get in a church if you're in a wheelchair. But a lot of barriers are social. So we try to go in and talk to the church about what is your church's mission? And usually it's something along the lines of love God, love people. And so we'll say, okay, if it's a true church. And so we come alongside and say, we want to help you do that because some of your people that you're loving, you're called to love, have disabilities. So how do you deal with a second grader who has autism in a regular Sunday school class? What does that look like? So we give them training. We help them kind of evaluate how to do that. We talk to them about anything from how to make behavior modifications, how to adapt curriculum for maybe an adult who has an intellectual disability. So really across the span, really just begin to change the culture of the church so that they're welcoming people with disabilities and And like we talked earlier, just about it, just for it to become normal, for people not to. Sometimes people feel uncomfortable because they've never been around people with disabilities. They're scared of what to say or what not to say, and so we just want them to have this comfort level that these are just people. People sometimes will say to me, "Well, how do I talk to them?" And I'll say, "Well, how do you talk to your friend?"
Right.
It's the same.
Right.
There are some differences, obviously, and we talk to them about how do you help them with those differences.
Right.
But we really want it to be the whole church coming behind this. And again, not just welcoming and serving them. Those are really important things. Right. But also recognizing these are people who have gifts. You want them serving as part of your body. So it goes beyond just, we're caring for you. It's us and them. We have this little, we're going to put the people with disabilities over here. That's not the model that's not what we feel like God calls us to do.
Right.
And the Bible talks about, people have different gifts. We're all given God-given gifts. And even people with disabilities have gifts. And often, and it even says that.
Well, some of us. Let's leave Neil out.
Being a mean old man is his gift.
That's your honesty and your bluntness.
Humor.
Right. That's right. But how, and the Bible even talks about how sometimes what we see as the weaker parts of the body are indispensable.
Right.
And Johnny often says a church that does not welcome people with disabilities is disabled. There's a benefit to the church as well. It's not just, we're helping these people and having compassion. That's a great start.
Right.
But it really is welcoming them and giving them a place in the body of Christ.
Right.
Giving them a place to serve. And just changing that church culture. So that's a big part of what I do is go out to churches and speak to them and help them. And
I know in our church, my son is autistic, and for the last couple of summers, we've had him working with the church where they go out and work with different nonprofits, like Beardsley Farm. That's one of his favorites. He loves working in the farm. And we don't live on one, so he doesn't know much about it. But one day, one of the chickens decided he was going AWOL. And Nathan, for some reason, decided he was the one who was going to catch it. And so he ran, and he got in front of it. The chicken really ran into him, and he caught it. And he knew not to hurt it. He just caught it and held on to it. And he was so excited about this. My son, who was too shy to talk, got in front of the church and told the story.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, I was sitting in the back tearing up when my boy was talking to the church. That's incredible.
That is.
I was very proud of him. And he's learned how to paint. They work on houses for people who need some work that they can't do themselves. And he's learned to paint. He's learned how to repair things. And, when he first started doing this, they would say, well, he kind of stays by himself a lot. Well, give him time.
Sure.
He'll figure it out. You can't force this. You can't go, hey, Nathan, you want to go for it? You got to let him reach out.
Right.
And now he does. And he has his friends that he likes in the group. And it does things. So I really appreciate that our church has allowed him to organically grow into a part of what you're doing.
And that's what we talk a lot about, just creating a place of belonging. Because that's what we all want. That's really the desire for all of us. And that's part of what God intended the church to be.
I think
is a place where we have fellowship and belonging. And so, and treating people with dignity and respect. There's several churches we work with who have adult programs, and they do a lot in the community. They recognize these adults have gifts. Can they work a regular job? Some can. Some can't. But they do have things they can do that give them meaning and purpose. It's not just we're going to sit and do crafts all day. Crafts are great. Some people love crafts, but they provide opportunities like serving at Carm. Or I had one church tell me they created these pets or toys for animals, and they went and took them to a shelter and were able to hand them out to the animals. So just finding a place where they have dignity and they're seen as real people with real needs and real gifts. And they get that, like I said, they offer something to the church. I was watching something the other day on Facebook, and it was somebody who works with people in the community with disability, and they said, these people get it more than we do. There is a part of, especially with adults who have intellectual disabilities, often are not caught up in the things that we're caught up in. And that is such a gift to the church, really, to anybody. But in the church, we need to be reminded of what's important. We need to be reminded of, at our family retreat, we have worship, and it's a little crazy. I mean, it's loud. There's people moving around. There's kids blowing bubbles. There's people singing off key and moaning, and that's how they're singing
You
to the
mentioned
Lord.
the singing off key before. You always look right at me when you say that. What do you know?
I've never heard you sing. This is not a personal attack.
Well,
That's a good thing for you. No,
Yeah, I don't believe
I
in
mean,
child
you can-
abuse.
no.
Of course I haven't sung in front of you. It's illegal for me to sing in 35 states, but good Lord. But anyway,
I didn't know that secret, but now I do.
Well,
so.
it's terrible.
But it's just this beautiful picture of worship because nobody's trying to impress anybody.
Right.
It really is just pouring their hearts out to God. So like I said, I think the church misses out when we don't welcome people,
Right.
because we don't. It just kind of brings a perspective because really we're all broken. We're all disabled in a sense.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Everybody's disabled.
Sure. Right.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now, if you're out here listening to this and you say, this really sounds like something I need to be involved with, but you aren't, how can you become involved?
Well, we do always have volunteers. We have volunteers who come to our family retreats every year. We have volunteers who come to our warrior getaways that we're getting ready to do. And we're trying to do more local events to invite families because and that's kind of a twofold thing. We want to serve our families, give them times to come together and just be together. And we also want to give churches a chance to come and welcome those families because about 52% of people with disabilities are not part of a faith community.
Right.
And there's a reason for that.
Right.
A lot of times they don't feel welcome or it feels too hard or they, I remember getting my 3 kids ready for church and driving up and you're like, whew, we did it.
Right.
And I had pretty neurotypical kids.
Right.
But you add a disability and then they walk in the door and some churches will say, I'm sorry, we can't accommodate you. Or they might say, sure, come on in, but Mom, you need to go back to Sunday school with your child.
Right.
And so it's hard. So wouldn't you rather stay home? Especially now with streaming, a lot of people would say, I'm just going to stay home. It's too much work.
Right.
So we want these families to know the church wants you there.
Right.
And so we bring our church leaders and volunteers to come and say, to get to know them and just become friends.
Right.
It's not just a project. It really is building friendships and saying, we want you as a part of our body.
Okay.
And so local events we do on social media, we usually post events that are coming up. And if you're interested in volunteering, we also have volunteers come to the office sometimes. We had some volunteers come in today and help us get ready for our warrior getaway and put name tags together and that kind of thing. I would also say if somebody's in a local church and you feel like, I don't really know if our church has a disability ministry or how our church handles that. Like I said, I go out to churches all the time and have conversations with pastors, with leaders. So I would love to connect with churches. If there's somebody who just says, I'd love to see this happen in our church. Right. We're happy to do that. We can help their churches, local churches that do respite events, that do Luke 14 parties, which is just a party that celebrates people with disabilities. So we can help churches with any kind of events they do. We can, and again, just with curriculum, any questions they have.
I'm curious why Luke 14.
Because in Luke 14, it talks about having this banquet. And Jesus said, go out into the streets and we used the word crippled earlier, which is not politically correct, but that's what it says in the early versions. And so that's the model of us going out and saying, we want you as part of our church. Okay. And so these parties we do, these Luke 14 parties, are to just welcome them to come in. Right. And then again, just give them access to these churches who have programs that can serve them. Okay. So I would say volunteer opportunities, there's always volunteer opportunities. And then if churches need help, just thinking through this. And, it's beautiful. Sometimes churches will call us and say, we have no idea what we're doing. We just know we're not doing it well. And we really want to serve people well. Please help us. And we are so happy to do that. Sure. Everything we do is free. We don't charge for the consultation or training. We do have a great, our website has a lot of resources for churches who might just need a little bit of help. We have videos and books and everything's downloadable and free. That's great. But we're glad to come in and help too. Okay.
Now, how did you know you had the passion for this? You
well,
obviously do.
I do. Well, when I was in college, I majored in special education. Okay. And
so you were going to be a teacher. Huh?
I actually was a teacher for a while.
Well, I'm sorry.
But I actually went to this event called Boo at the Zoo, and it was for people, kids with disabilities. Okay. And I just was hooked. I thought, this is what I want to do. Right. I knew I wanted to teach, but that really gave me a heart for people. And then during that time, I also worked in a group home for men. We would do activities with them. I worked with a young girl one summer who was autistic, and I was her caregiver. So that was just always my heart. And then I ended up teaching school for several years, but I actually didn't teach special ed just because we moved, and where we moved, it was easier to get a job in a private school. And then I stayed home with my kids for 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And it was kind of time. My kids were all moving out, and I've been so focused on them and all their activities for so long. And I just said, Lord, I want to do something I love. You know, I want to do something that I can pour my heart into.
Right.
And I thought about going back to teaching, but my dad was sick at the time, and I needed a flexible job.
Right.
And so I just began to look at nonprofits, and a friend of mine who actually works with Joni and Friends called me one day and said, hey, would you be interested in this? And it felt like the perfect combination of my gifts because I get the opportunity to teach quite a bit in churches.
Sure.
And I just have a heart to work with these families.
Right.
And so it just was God just brought it to me, really, honestly.
Right.
So
Oh, that's great.
really
I remember in one of my teaching assignments, I won't say which, I would find myself in the CDC classroom whenever I had time, because I like reading to the kids and teasing with them and having a good time, making them laugh. And one day the principal came in and did whatever and left. And as I was walking out, he said, I noticed you come in here a lot. Do you ever come in and say, there but by the grace of God go I? And I said, absolutely never. I come in here and thank God that I'm a part of their community.
Wow. Yeah.
And he just said, yeah, but you're not, we're not, none of us are the same.
Right.
So that doesn't matter. That really doesn't matter. What's important is these kids need a little help. And I know what that's like. So I don't mind coming in and giving them a little help.
Right.
Because somebody did that for me when I was their age. So, you know, I just think that's important to distinguish that no matter what the disability, there's dignity, there's a possibility for love, and God can use them. So I think that's a good thing.
And you know, I talked to several people, families who are affected by this. Well, and it's hard. It's a hard life.
Sure.
As you know. But there's also some great blessings and joy in it. And I don't say that tritely. I don't say that.
Right.
I say that with great sensitivity. And I don't live that, so I don't know that from personal experience. But just you know, when Joni talks, she says, "This is my platform. You know, this is what God has for me. God can use something that's really horrible to accomplish something that's beautiful."
Absolutely.
And so we really, you know, that's something we talk to families about. That yes, this is challenging and difficult, but God can use any of it.
Right.
And so to offer that hope that you're not alone. And another thing I didn't mention earlier is we also Joni still does a radio show. If you get on our website, there's podcasts, there's blogs. There's just a lot of great resources for families who are struggling. And you can search different things. You can search autism or even mental health issues or all different kinds of topics. And we have blogs and podcasts. And Joni's written several books about suffering, about hope. So there's just a lot of great resources to help families too who are struggling. And somebody who gets it, who's been there and knows from personal experience.
Well, I really do appreciate you coming and talking to us.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
It makes me feel good to know all these things are going on. And I'm going to regret this, but I want to find a way to get involved. So let's talk.
Oh, no, you're not going to regret it. Trust me.
Let's figure right there now.
Absolutely.
I've recently started to tour churches. And I'm going to mention this so if anybody out there wants me to come, they can invite me. But I take a panel of people and we go into the church. And we talk about living victoriously with a disability.
Right.
You know, I know there are troubles. You know, my parents didn't know how I was going to walk. They didn't know how prosthetics work. They didn't know what I was going to do with my arms. But my mother always had that joyous love about her. I was her baby. And I was fat and bald just like everybody else in the family. And she related to me. And I don't think she ever saw it as a burden. She loved me and she wanted to help. So we talk to churches about that so that when people like us come there to go to church, they feel more comfortable. And we try to teach them some tips like, you don't ask me about my hands if you don't know my name yet.
Right.
Yeah, that's not that I won't answer you, but we can't become best friends that way.
Right.
You know, I'm going to think, you know, that's not really very nice, you know.
That's right. And you're a person first.
Right. And I was telling the group last week, there was this guy, there's a big cowboy hat, came waddling over to me one day, and he shouted, he said, "Whatever happened to you?"
Wow.
And I was like, my answer was I learned to read. You know? But, you know, those are the kind of things you want to avoid. But,
Sure.
you know, other than that, we can all get along and get to know each other and live in peace.
Right.
And I hope so.
Right. And we talk to churches too about just, you know, caring for these families and saying, what do we do?
Right.
And I'll usually say, well, ask the family.
Right.
You know, to
Right.
say, because really, for someone to just say, what do you need? How can we help
Right.
you?
How can
You
we
know,
help
that's
you?
such a humble
Right.
question to ask, and it shows
Right.
I care about you. I want you to meet your needs, but I really don't know how to help you.
Right.
And it might be mowing their grass
Right.
because they're at therapies 5 times a week.
Right.
It might be helping them with transportation. It
Yeah.
might just be praying for them. It might just
Right.
be, you know, welcoming them to a Sunday school class that they couldn't go to.
Right.
So
Right.
it can be a
Right.
variety of things. But
Yeah.
again, it goes back to we're more alike than we're different.
Right.
And so if I want to know how to help you or help somebody, I say, how do I help you?
Yeah.
That's where it starts. And
Right. Right.
you begin
My
the
son with
conversation.
his autism sometimes hand claps.
Mhm.
He does that publicly a
Right.
lot. And one day I saw him doing that in a room full of kids his age. And he was just walking around. He was kind of self-isolating and doing this.
Sure.
He's probably a little nervous about being around these kids he didn't
Right.
know. And I saw one of the church ladies was coming up behind him. And I didn't want her to say, you know, you don't need to do that, or
Right.
you know, trying to stop him. So I was nervous. So I beelined over to him as fast as I could go. And fortunately, she started talking before I got there. And she said, Nathan, I didn't see you get a cookie. Would you like one? And I went, wait a minute. We're a fat family. I like cookies. I'm okay with this.
This is good.
Nathan went with her over to get a cookie, and she could talk to him and make him feel welcome. It was wonderful.
Right.
She did not say anything about what he was doing. He did that all he wanted. So
Sure. That's good.
thank you for coming here.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of this. I think you're amazing. I think your group is amazing.
Thank you.
I wish y'all the luck in the future. Thank you for coming by.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. And thank you for joining us tonight. I'm sorry I'm still coughing, but I will until I get too old to cough, I guess. But thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe. Please share this with your friends on Facebook or whatever you're on. I don't know all those things. But please help us get some viewers. We're trying to stay in this game, and it gets harder because we've been in for 3 years, and we have about 350 something members now. So we can use some more subscribers. Please help us, and thank you for your support. And we will see you next week. Good night.